coming to this one, right? I talked about the CI steps that that in general a project can have. Probably in some project, again, it depends on the requirement. They may add a few, they may remove some of them from this list, right? But for all of this to work, if you remember in the beginning, I have mentioned that CI steps are getting executed, but how GitHub action knows what to execute? So for that, we have to write a configuration. And how that configuration looks like, this is the configuration that you have to write as part of GitHub action workflow. So basically, it's a YAML configuration where you'll be defining certain steps. In this, I have used only one steps, but under that we have service steps like Docker lint check. I have just added a random, not random, but just like pseudo messages here. But in general, you'll be adding steps to fix that, right? You'll be adding a command to run the Docker lint checks. Then next you have a checkout to repo, right? So where exactly you are publishing your code? Of course, into some repos, right? So you have to check out to that repo, pull the latest changes, so that at the end, when it creates a package or it creates an image, which is nothing but a package of your source code, it has to know the latest changes, right? Otherwise, there's no point of creating an image of the same source code, right? So you have to check out to that repo, take the latest pull, and make sure that it has the latest code that you have published to the GitHub. Now, as part of this workflow, I have mentioned that the created image will be published to ECR. So you have to set that AWS credentials. Otherwise, how your GitHub would know where to publish it, right? So GitHub is a separate service. AWS is a separate service. Both are not known to each other, right? They don't know to each other like how to communicate. So in order to communicate to each other, you have to provide some credentials. To whom? To GitHub, because GitHub has all the changes, all the source code and everything. As part of that, we are building a image, and then finally, once that image is ready, we are publishing that to AWS ECR. So in order to publish that to AWS ECR, we have to have the mechanism to talk to AWS ECR. And one of the mechanisms is to set the credentials so that GitHub can read that, and then it can finally talk to AWS ECR to publish the created image, right? And for that, you have to write these configurations. Again, don't worry about these configurations. I have already published that into one of my public GitHub repos. So we'll be seeing that soon in action, right? Now, before I go to CD, let's talk about the output, and then finally I'll be showing that in the demo, right? So if you see this screen, this is the CI workflow outcome looks like, where as soon as you publish the code or push the code, CI checks would get started, and finally it will show you the CI stages like this, right? Where if you look at first one is setup job, Docker lint check, checkout repo, and all of these things. And these things are coming from where? Coming from these configurations that we have defined. Now, enough talking. Let's see all of these things which I have explained so far in action, right? So for that, I would like to go to VS